Okay, hello and welcome to our webinar 4. Actually, our first webinar after the summer break, and I'm so happy that we still have so many attendees, so thank you for that. I'm Robert, and today I would like to talk about managed layers and conflicts in Power Platform projects. And as you know, one of our favorite topics or focus areas is automated deployments. So I'm going to explain you a few things how to deal with managed layers and unmanaged layers and automated deployments, and of course, how to solve conflicts. So what I'm going to do is I will give you a quick introduction about the topic itself, but then we'll switch to the focus. Okay, what do we have to do to solve that and how we can do that in an automatic way? And of course, I would like to give you a quick demo about our product, the Deployment Manager, where basically you can just enable one checkbox and say, okay, I would like to resolve all of those things automatically. We'll have about 30 minutes of content, and as always, of course, we will have a Q&A block at the end of the session. So feel free to write down your questions and ask them later. Yeah, okay, then let's take a look at the details for today. So as I said, I would like to give you a quick recap, managed layers, unmanaged layers, and how we can deal with it. I mean, those are very basics, but it's very important to understand the whole thing, to understand what has to be done to fulfill all the ALM requirements. And the second part is best practices. So in most cases, you have multiple solutions, and sometimes you have to deal with hard fixes, and there's a high chance of conflicts because you have a lot of dependencies between the components and even the solutions. So of course, I know there are different strategies to do that, but I would like to give an overview. I mean, the topic itself is way too complex to explain everything within one session, but I would like to give you an overview and then you can decide, okay, what is the best strategy for your company. And the third point, ALM with KD Tooling Deployment Manager. As I said, I would like to introduce you our concepts. So I'm going to show you some slides, the basics, and I will repeat the same steps live. So I will export some solutions, I will create some unmanaged layers, and then I will show you how to resolve it. Of course, everything within one click. Okay, I think most of you already know we are 𝗂𝗲𝗄 based in Austria, and we're very focused on Microsoft technologies. But today I would like to keep it short because I would like to give you a quick announce something about some other project, just 1 minute. I know this is not the focus area for today, but I really love the project, so I think it's very useful for some of you. So just a quick introduction here. We are working on software analysis and also Azure analysis. So what we do is we analyze code for Power Platform and also Azure components like Azure Function, logic steps, and so on. And in this case, we would like to publish 2 products next year, and we have next year, but there's a private beta group. I think the registration will start in a few days, or even today, I'm not sure about that anyway. This one is pretty cool because it's a Visual Studio extension where you can resolve attributes, of course, based on metadata. So in this case, this is just for developers. You can see it as an entity, and you would like to get some attributes. In most cases, you know that, but there's a high chance of typos and so on. So what we do is we provide, based on the metadata and the code context, the necessary suggestions here. So this is quite useful. Sometimes you don't have to deal with metadata copy and paste stuff, so because everything is within Visual Studio. And of course, there are a lot of checks as well. It's still a better version of research project, but I think you can get the context here. So yeah, very nice thing here. And the second thing is not just for developers, it's basically for all. So it's a platform where you can just type in some query, in this case, account, and the system will analyze all of your Azure and Power Platform components for you. So in this case, you can see the dependencies, you can see the trigger chains. So for example, you got something here as an action, it's called sync to ACP, and there are 2 triggers. So it will trigger an update of an account and also in contact. So you can feel the whole components here. And even for code-based components like plugins or TypeScript, yeah. So it's not just a no-code things, also code-based. And this the most one of the best benefits here is even if a non-developer would like to know, okay, what's going on in the system, you can do it within seconds. Another quick thing, it's not just for Power Platform, even for custom web APIs. In this case, it's a custom plugin. We can see, okay, there's an update of an entity. We can see that here, update account, but also trigger. So in this case, it's an Azure function, and we can extract without open the code, you will see and extract to get the logic. So in this case, I know the plugin, and I know, okay, there's an update of an account and also the trigger of an Azure function. So both things can be shown within seconds, and this is quite useful to analyze a big system, but also for onboarding purposes and things like that. So I'm very happy if you can hear some feedback from your side. Feel free to share your opinion on our LinkedIn page. Okay, then let's get back to the main topic of today. So a quick recap about the different components. And as you already know, okay, we got managed layers and unmanaged layers. And of course, the recommended way to deploy is always managed. I know there are different opinions, but usually it's always managed. So what we have is we got something called default solution, which is basically the basic. And then we have multiple managed solutions. So this could be an internal solution or even a third-party solution, it doesn't matter. So you have multiple solutions. And if you need to override some stuff, you really have to consider the import order and also the dependencies. I will show the dependencies and some examples later. But for now, let's keep it like this. Okay, we got managed, and at the top, we got an unmanaged layer. So the unmanaged layer is always at the top. So if you got some unmanaged changes and you override it via the unmanaged layer, you will always see the active layer as the unmanaged layer. So in this case, I got a very simple form. And if we try to go to the form in a managed system, so for example, if you got the dev system is unmanaged and you got your integration or UAT system, it's managed, you cannot edit the components directly because you will get something like this. The form is not managed, cannot be edited. Okay. So, and here, one more time, if you got the dev system on the left side, you got the managed external, yeah, this basically means unmanaged, and then you go to the UAT or in system or whatever, yeah, it's managed, you cannot edit it. So what a lot of people actually do is they go to the default solution, open the component, and yeah, then you can edit it. So you don't have any issue with that. But there are some side effects, and this is basically the main problem or the root cause of the topic today. If we do that, in this case, I got my managed solution, but if I edit it via the default solution, I will get some unmanaged layers. So the basic rule is always, okay, don't touch anything like production, UAT, and so on manually. Always do it via automated way. Yeah. So don't edit anything there. Yeah. It's the same thing actually is valid for configuration data. This is just a basic rule. Sometimes there are a few exceptions. So let's take a look at the list why people are actually doing that. I mean, most of them, they do know that it's quite bad practice, but to say, okay, there's no other chance to do that. So I say, okay, in almost every case, there's a better way to do that. So one of the goals is, okay, change URLs of web resources. So sometimes you got iframes and other stuff, so you would like to import some windows from different web applications. Well, pretty easy, don't use static rows. So you can basically write some script or some configuration values, retrieve the address, and then depending on the environment, you can get the right address. So this is pretty straightforward. Fix form issues, I think that's a very common thing. If people go to the system and say, okay, this is a very tiny change, yeah, I can do that and repeat it, no problem. So they go to production, just remove a field or do some other changes. Well, yeah, it works until the next deployment. So the next deployment, you will get issues because the people will see, okay, there's something wrong. And in most cases, if you've got a bigger team, there's nobody who can actually do or know all of the changes, yeah. So there's a lot of communication issues then and so on. So high efforts to fix tiny things, yeah. So basic recommendation: don't use any unmanaged layers. Even on your UAT systems, so have one or multiple systems, but do just the customizations one single place and then deploy managed. So that's the most secure way you can do so. Okay, and of course, yeah, resolve merge conflicts. In most cases, this is related to some third-party solutions. So if you import some solutions and then import your own solutions, very easy way to solve that is, okay, if you got third-party solutions, import them first and then apply your own solutions, because then you can deal with it. I know there are different ways to do that, but this is one of the easiest ones. Yeah, and enable controls. I always said that usually, I mean, developers do that via JavaScript, so this is totally fine, yeah, because it's not stored anywhere. But if you go to the system and just enable some fields, set it to not read-only or stuff, yeah, you have that, but then you got an unmanaged layer as well. So this is not just about forms, it's also about views and other things. So there are many components, but the concept is still the same. So if you have to do that, use some other tools here. And yeah, component dependencies, I've seen that so many times that people have problems to say we cannot do it, we have to use some unmanaged solutions because we have dependencies. Yeah, well, you need to invest some time to fix all the dependency things, yeah. Sometimes you have circle dependencies and some other weird things, yeah. Invest the time to solve that, you will get the time back very soon, yeah. I can promise you that, I've seen that so many times. Okay, so now we know the reasons why people actually try to go to the system and do some direct customizations on the other systems. Before we can talk about the solutions, let's take a look at a very common example, actually one of my recommendations. In this case, we got a very simple project. Yeah, we got 5 solutions. I mean, you can add additional things, but my recommendation way, especially for automated deployments, try to keep the solution concept as simple as possible. If you just have a few solutions, it's easy. If you have multiple solutions with some weird names and it's not very clear how the dependency thing works, then it's quite hard to find a way to automate it, to deploy all those things in the automated way. So try to keep it as simple as possible. And in this case, I always prefer to group the solutions, sorry, the components based on the type. So in this case, I got 𝗲𝗲𝗶𝘀 plugins, which is obvious. Okay, just 𝐶# assemblies, SDK steps, and so on. In this case, we can see that on the right side. Okay, we got plugins here. Second or third line, web resources. Yeah, just JavaScript and all other web resources like images and so on. I think this is pretty straightforward. So with this recommendation, it's quite easy to do that, and customizations, which is in most cases the biggest one, where you got all your entities and so on. So especially when you have to upgrade things, solutions, delete stuff, it's easier if you have separated solutions, because, for example, web resources, you can delete it in case of any disaster recovery. You can just delete it and you will not lose any data. In this case, you don't have any problems. That the same actually is true for plugins. So you can just delete it and install it again. So the data is still there because everything is within the customization solutions. Okay. Okay, now it's a little bit tricky to explain the whole thing, but let's start with the box at the top. So if you remember, we had a very similar example at the beginning. We got the default solution. In this case, we got the third-party solution managed and my customizing solution managed and unmanaged layer. I would like to focus on the blue boxes, so just 2 of them. For now, we ignore the others. So if you take a look at this part below, let me quick get the pen here. Okay. So what we got here? Okay. We got hotfix solutions. In this case, I would like to show you how to apply a hotfix. I mean, usually you have your full deployment, but sometimes you just deploy partial components. Yeah, and this could be very tricky because, of course, you have to think about the dependencies. But let's assume, okay, we have to deal with it. There's no other way. So what we can do is we can just create one solution, call it hotfix. And by the way, we are using the same solution for all kind of hotfixes. So after the next deployment, the next release, we just change the components and use the same solution. That's pretty straightforward. So what we can do is we got the hotfix here. So this is just an unmanaged label, and actually we changed it. So after that, we will get an unmanaged layer. So this is what we have now. When we change, of course, we have to save and publish it, but it's a very common thing. So this works actually. So what we need to do now is, if you go to the system, we will have this one. So it looks a little bit different. The examples are not the same here, but I think you can imagine it. Oh, no, sorry, my mistake, it's correct. Yeah, okay, so I want to change that. Yeah, I can do that, I got the hotfix now, but 2 problems. So when the next deployment comes and I just deploy all of my solutions, but without the hotfix solution, I will not have to change. So this will be one problem, of course, of the other systems. And also, if I deploy the hotfix again, there will be another problem. So there are different things. Yeah, I will explain the details step by step on the next slide. But basically, it's always like this. Okay, I go to my dev system, I do the changes, and then I can create the hotfix, include all of the components actually necessary for the hotfix, and then I deploy it. And then I won't have any unmanaged layer. If I go directly to the system and do the changes, I will have the unmanaged layer. So I would like to handle both cases. The first case is, let's assume somebody touched the production system, did some customizations, and now we have to deal with the unmanaged layer. So we would like to remove it because we would like to override all changes, and we would like to use all of the components and customizations from our dev system or our system and just override all our unmanaged customizations. So before we can skip this. Actually, of course, you can take a look at the code behind. So basically it's XML, and every form can be compared to the previous version. So let's get back for a second. compare it, see, okay, the layer number 1 is basically the unmanaged layer or active layer, or sorry, it's layer number 3. So this is basically the version user will see when they open the form. Okay, so now let's talk about the solution. Those steps are actually very straightforward. I already got my prepared workspace here. So for those of you who are not know the system, this is basically what we call workspace. And say, okay, remove unmanaged layers. So that means, okay, during the import from a managed solution, all of the unmanaged layers will be removed. Of course, you cannot restore them because they're gone. So, but you don't need them anyway. So this is an interesting thing. So you don't have to check the components and see, okay, are there any unmanaged layers? Just go to the system and see, okay, everything is fine, and then it's okay. So the next thing we need to do, we need to apply unmanaged. I'm gonna this. You see, you will get them, and we can continue. So in this case, I got my configuration entity, random entity, and next steps would be, okay, we make sure, okay, the bugs, and then we can start the deployment. System will start to you can increase the log levels, for example, debug information of detail to simplify information. And the next thing is, of course, we have to verify it. Yeah? And this same thing here. So if you remember that part of our main deployment, and we got the hotfix. So well, actually, the next release, of course, we'll have the hotfix. You have to make sure that or just deploy customizations, but then you will still have the hotfix layer there. But it's totally fine as long as you deploy the hotfix solution as well. So there are different ways to do that, but the simplest thing would be if you just deploy both. But if you need to be ready to do branching cuts and so on, the whole thing is a little bit more complicated. But in any case, if you consider the dependencies, it's quite easy to handle those things. Okay, then let me switch to the application. Okay. And the int environment, hotfix, and the bugs is checked. So this is fine. So let's move on and create. Sorry for that. This one, this. That's the right one. Of course, I already prepared a few things in the background. So, but I just want to show in real time how it works. So we have to wait until everything is loaded here. But the whole deployment, even if you have to deal with a lot of entities, can be done within a few minutes. Of course, we do a lot of delta checks in the background if it's really necessary to remove those layers, because actually there are so many different layers. The whole thing is a little bit more complicated than I told you, because of course, a lot of unnecessary things. Yeah. But if you know how to filter the right components, it's quite easy. So, okay, again, we got our default solution here. So we can go to our main form. But before we do that, let's double check there are no unmanaged layers. Okay, great. There's actually nothing here. Okay. Okay, actually it was a little bit faster this morning, but yeah, we still have some time, so I think it's fine. Okay, cool. Okay, and again, this is just a very basic example, but of course the whole thing is valid for different cases when you just remove fields and rearrange views and so on. So it's the same thing. So let's go ahead and say, okay, let's publish this. And by the way, if you need to do some analysis regarding unexpected views and so on, of course, you can go to the components and see, okay, so unmanaged layers, and then there's a feature where you can see the difference. So there's a built-in comparison feature where you can see the difference. Yeah, in the past, just used some other tools, but it's quite useful to retrieve the values easily. So you don't have to deal with any weird APIs. Okay, looks good. Done here. Okay, then let's go back to my application here and let's start it. And actually, this is a very common use case. I've been asked it so many times. Okay, why is this a local application? We are fully integrated in Azure DevOps, so of course the recommended way to deploy is via Azure DevOps or another build provider. But sometimes you've got your hotfix and you do it very fast. Yeah, it's just easier to do it locally. But of course you can select. So in this case, let's go for local. Okay. So as you can see, there's a very simple deployment here. So of course we can build the resources and so on. So a lot of basic stuff. But I think the most important thing is to export the managed solution hotfix, because I need to override it. So again, this will take up to 1 minute. So let's work that in the background. I got my remove unmanaged layer feature enabled. So that means they will do some checks during the import process, and we will see that in the details, of course. Okay, then let's wait a few seconds. Okay. In the meantime, let me explain a few things here. Of course, to export things is a very basic requirement, but when it comes to timeouts and so on, actually there's no guarantee. Sometimes there are some issues with exporting, so on. I think most of you already know that. But what you can do in most cases is just to retry. It doesn't matter if you have automatic deployments by a tool or some scripts and so on. In most cases, you can just do a retry. But also there are some issues when there are some other imports in the background. So my recommendation is to always check, okay, are there any other system tasks in the background? So in this case, it was very fast, but sometimes, especially for web resources, I still don't know why, but we know there are so many cases when there's a specific problem with a solution called web resource, and even if it's empty, but in most cases, check the parallel jobs and check if there's any other issues, retry, and that's it. So this actually works in most cases. Okay, looks good so far. Okay, let's wait until the import is completed. Should be quite fast here. Okay, almost done. And again, at the end, it will take a look at the system and actually retrieve a lot of components and do some checks and see, okay, are there any active or unmanaged layers? And are there any conflicts? So how does actually this works in the process in detail is a little bit complicated. So I'm not going to explain all the things here, but the main goal is to remove the unmanaged layers and do that very fast. So this is the main purpose of the whole thing. And again, the recommendation to not touch the production system manually is still valid, but sometimes there are a few exceptions where you can't deal with it. And this is why we said, okay, this is a very useful feature. We usually just use the features internally before we publish it. So we say, okay, this is a very stable and useful feature here. So almost there, just a few seconds. Okay, but I got my coffee here, so I'm happy with it. Okay, this is the thing here. maybe one more thing here. If you have multiple solutions from different systems, so for example, if you have a few customization system or development system unmanaged, and then you deploy everything unmanaged to run centralized customization system, you sometimes have the same thing. But then the whole thing is a little bit more complicated because you have to deal with not just resolve them, but also merge. And there are some strategies to, and also some automated way to do that. But depends where we are on your deployment strategy, but I'm very happy to discuss things about that. Okay, still importing. Yeah, sometimes those values are a little bit weird, but hopefully it works. I'm not expecting any issues here, but we never know. So. Okay. Let's wait a few moments here. And also one more thing, we had a lot of discussions this year about, okay, how we can deal with multiple environments. And of course, you can have multiple deployments in parallel of different environments. So this is another very common requirement here. So what we basically try is we try to provide a solution where you can use the ICD concepts out of the box from day one. So you don't have to write any code, you don't have to prepare a lot of things. You can basically implement the whole deployment strategy within a few hours if you got the necessary permission. So in most cases, in enterprise environments, it's not about the tooling, it's about the permissions. Okay, cool. We are done here, and as you can see, I mean, this log level is set to debug. This is where we see the details here. But there was one unmanaged layer. In this case, we got the details here. It's a system form. And of course, those details are not interesting right now. The only thing is, okay, we got the system for him. Okay, then let's check the results. We still have our form here. And we can see, hopefully there's no unmanaged layer. Okay, perfect. That was cool, and as you know, okay, this was just one component, but we do that in parallel in most cases if it's possible, if there are no dependencies. So this is very fast in many different use cases. Of course, it's longer than this very easy example, but it's still a very limited time, so we don't waste too much time doing the deployment. Okay, then let's go back to the slides here. I'm done with my content, so now we have some time for Q&A. So feel free to share your questions in the chat window. Give me a sec to switch. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we got so many questions here. Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, I don't look in the camera because I got my second screen here, so I have to take a look at the questions here. But let me go through the list of questions. Okay, let's start with the first one. Business process flows in the customization solutions. In the flow solution. Well, business process flows I usually have in the customization solution because there is a dependency to the entities, and I would like to have a specific solution for flows because I try to keep them independent to the entities. Well, to be honest, there's a special thing. It's called connection references. I already had a webinar a few weeks ago or 4 months ago about the same topic. So if you're interested in the details, check out the webinar or just drop a message at LinkedIn, but basically I would go for the customization solution then. Handle multiple partners. Yeah, if you have to deal with a bigger team and multiple team members have to work on the same entity, yeah, well, you have to talk to the people. I mean, if you got some tools, yeah, tools can help you, but they cannot replace some organization or rules. So you need to have some guidance in the team. How can you avoid that? And if you say, okay, you have different environments and everyone is working on an entity, my recommended way is, okay, go to the customization solution, run centralized system and do the customizations there. I mean, how many customizations do you have on one entity? So if it's not possible to say, okay, this guy first and then the other person, if you say, okay, it's so much work, we have to do it in parallel, say okay, let's have one system together and do that. There's still a risk of conflicts, but at the end of the day, you have to organize it in some way. And regarding the layers, I think that's pretty easy if you distribute the solutions in an unmanaged way on every environment. For example, every night you have an automated deployment and deploy everything to the deployment environments. So you basically keep the deployment environments updated. You don't run into these issues. But of course, if they're working in parallel, there's no other way to do that as far as I know, yeah. But my recommended thing is always try to update or keep the development environments also updated for automated solutions, of course, automated deployments, sorry. Okay. Okay, is it supported to use both unmanaged and managed layers? Theoretically, yes, but my recommendation is to avoid any unmanaged layers of solutions. Yeah. What is the tool? Yeah, 𝗲𝗲𝗯𝗶 is just an example, but what I just chose is a tool called PD Tooling Deployment Manager, which is basically a deployment solution for Microsoft Dynamics or Power Platform. Just take a look at our website and you will find it. Yeah, I think you can find a lot of information there. Otherwise, feel free to reach out. Can I recover deleted layers? No, not really. Because if you delete them, actually a few entities will be deleted in the background. So actually not entities, records or table rows, whatever. So you cannot recover them, but it's just an XML, so you can copy it. But on the other side, okay, why do you need this? So if you remove it, you don't need it anymore, right? Okay. What about patch solutions? Well, as some of you might know, I've never been a big fan of patch solutions, so I cannot say a lot of or give any good recommendations. But I'm not sure about that. But I think Microsoft recently announced that they will try to avoid patch solutions. So I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but my recommendation is don't use them at all. Well, yeah, that's a good thing. Why use override customizations? Well, yeah, there's a very basic argument where basically it's a Boolean value. When you import the solution, you can say you would like to override the customizations or not. But yeah, play around a little bit with the flag and you will see, okay, if you still already have unmanaged layers, you cannot remove it with them. Of course, it's useful, but of course, and also for automated deployments, I always recommend enable it, yeah, because you would like to override everything. You don't want to have any manual changes on production because this is always a risk of any unexpected behavior. So yeah, just play around with the flag and you will see that if you still set it, all of the unmanaged layers will be still there. And yeah, if I'm wrong, please provide me an example and I will tell you what I think about it. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you cannot directly remove unmanaged layers on an entity, yeah, because they're subcomponents. Basically, I always recommend, okay, if you have an entity, include all subcomponents in the solution. Don't try to deploy just part of it. Maybe there's some different opinions as well, but it's just easier if you have the full entity. And why do you need that? I mean, maybe there's some cases where for hotfixes where you need that, but in most cases you can go for the full entity. So if you would like to remove unmanaged layers, do not go to the entity directly, go to the subcomponents. So for example, a view or a form. Are there any scenarios in which unmanaged solutions should be used or unmanaged layers? Well, yeah, for development purposes. So I mean, if you develop something, you got your development system and you have unmanaged layers because you need to change everything, yeah. And if you have bigger teams, you have multiple customization systems. So you have multiple systems unmanaged, then you deploy everything to one centralized unmanaged system. Let's call it customization system, and then deploy to the next stages like testing, UAT, pre-prod, and so on, managed. So this is the main purpose of the whole thing for development. I hope this is understandable so far. Why do you recommend not using patches at all? Well, if you have automated deployments, you can deploy every night. Yeah, there are no efforts. So this is one thing. And I do understand the concept of patch solutions, but so many issues with that is one thing, and especially if you have to remove some stuff. And why not just deploy the full solution? I mean, it's like a hotfix, I know, but it's easier to use a small solution, not a patch, just a small common solution and deploy that, because you can resolve the layers, so that's easier. And I will keep you updated about that. I mean, I will double check if the official opinion from Microsoft is still not to use them. I'm not sure about that, I just heard it, or maybe I'm wrong about that. But based on my experience, we had so many issues with that. So yeah, I'll just say, okay, go for the full solution, just create a common solution as a hotfix. That's much easier than patches. Okay, any useful links or webinars, blogs related to this topic? Well, yeah, of course, take a look at our LinkedIn page. My colleague Wang will paste a few links in the chat window or announcements so you can see it. But I think you will find a lot of information on our website and also on our LinkedIn page. And of course, always feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that. Okay, yeah, I think we're almost done with the time. Okay, I have to answer the other questions afterwards. I will try to reply by email. In most cases, we will receive the email addresses, but sometimes if you're anonymous, we cannot reach out to you. So if you would like to have an answer, and just feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. And yeah. Okay, then thank you all for listening today. And yeah, as always, happy deployment. Yeah. Okay, then see you. Bye-bye.